Good evening. I hope you all have been well this week. The weather here has been absolutely gorgeous, so eat your heart out if you don't share 78 degrees and 55 at night. So we're going to start with chapter 4. And the first question I want to ask is, let's do a quick overview of the human being so far, okay? Because clearly we're going to see it that according to Genesis, and I doubt we would argue this point just on our own experience of life, is that the world has a human problem, or the main problem of the creative world is the human being, okay, is a human being. And I think that would be clear to us just from looking at the headlines and whatnot, but it's also clear to the writers of Genesis. So, portrayal of the human being so far. Very quick, very simple. Adam, Eve, garden. Adam wants an extension of himself, a bone of his bones, flesh of his flesh, whatnot, and so on and so forth. Obviously, they are not satisfied with what God has created and given them, namely the garden. You do a little bit of work. And notice that in Genesis and the second chapter, they just do a little bit work for enjoyment, so as not to get bored. Okay, and then just to enjoy God's provision for them. He's supplied everything and whatnot. And this idea of that there's a oneness of creation. You see, animals, humans, fish of the sea, they're all one. Okay, and linguistically they're identified as living creatures. Okay, and man is just a part of that. And then of course the idea that he has dominion. In other words, he's to oversee and to serve it by oversight, by dominion, by reigning. And the minimization is this idea of man made in the image and likeness of God. Okay, that we think, okay, it's sort of like, you know, if everybody's made in the image and likeness of God, the human beings, then no one is exceptional or different per se. Okay. Because in the world that the biblical writers are writing, no, there's not everybody as a son of God. Only the king, who's by virtue not of birth but by virtue of adoption, reigns in place. He's just the image. Okay, so you know we know the whole story of kingship, and then there's the rest of us. It sort of reminds me, and you know, if you're old enough to remember Dr. Seuss and the book about the Sneetches. You know, some have stars on their bellies and others don't. You know, the ones with stars think they're extra special and whatnot, the chosen ones, until some con artist comes in with his machine and knows how to paint stars on the bellies of the other. Now everybody has this, so they're no longer unique and cool. So then he brings in a machine to take it off and back and forth. Pretty soon everybody's all confused and don't know who they are, and the guy walks away with all their cash. Okay, so this idea of the human in general, made in the image of God, actually is a way of sort of debunking the idea of a unique king. And because the biblical notion will always be that God is the sole king, which is why 2 weeks ago I had you read 1 Samuel 8 to see that was the sin. You wanting someone to replace God's governorship, okay, God's kingship over you, the one who is both created, built, you know, took 7 days, 3 days he spent on just creating the land so it could function and nurture life, and then you want something else. So anyway, so now we're going to go to chapter 4, which I had hoped to cover last week, but didn't get to. And it's a story of Cain and Abel. So I'm going to read chapter 4, verse 1. Now the man knew his wife Eve, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have produced a man with the help of the Lord. That's good news. Good news. In other words, they're out of Eden in chapter 3, but the Lord is still blessing their procreation, which is the key point. That nowhere in Genesis will you find the word love, you see. Not that it's opposed to the word, but it's the idea that the blessing is the procreation. In other words, life continues. See, it doesn't happen automatically. It has to continue through the seed, through the procreation, not just for vegetation animals, but also for the human animal. Okay, so it's good news with the help of the Lord. Next, she bore his brother, Abel. Okay, Abel. Now, Cain's name means acquired one. It's related to what she said. What you don't know is the meaning of Abel's name. Okay, I'll tell you the meaning of his name, because the name is always significant, okay, because there's something important about the name and its content as it's related to the story. Okay, so Abel was a keeper of sheep, Cain a tiller of the ground, like Adam. Adam was told to till the ground. Okay. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground, and Abel, for his part, brought the firstlings of his flock, their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering. But for Cain and his offering, he had no regard. Now, don't write me a question and say, well, why? Okay, the text does not tell us why. Okay, so to try to figure out why, you have shepherdism, you have landed people, eternal conflict between the two, blah, blah, blah. We don't know why, and we're not told why. But we're going to see the importance of this story, because we're going to see time and again, God is constantly going to test the human being to see if he will be faithful, if he will do what is required of him. The test of Adam and Eve in the garden, and now Cain. So we're not told why. So Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell. The Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? And why has your countenance fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted?" Major teaching point. If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin, sin is lurking at the door like a lion. Its desire is for you, and you must master it. Okay? Notice how in Genesis now, post Garden of Eden, in exile on the outside, it's all about mastering this issue of sin, looking to destroy you. Okay? So it's a test. And the fact that Cain is told at the beginning it's a test, should have been fair enough warning. Cain said to his brother Abel, "Let us go out to the field." And when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Okay, so we're hardly have moved, and already there's fratricide, you see, jealousy and murder. Okay. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" He said, "I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper?" Now, if we've learned anything from the beginning of creation and the oneness of creation, then in fact is yes, we're in it together, okay, as a single whole, animal, human, vegetable, sea mammals. It's the oneness of creation, can never sort of be dismissed in our mind. But Cain wants to dismiss it. Am I my brother's keeper? And the answer is, of course. Now, Abel's name means wind. You blow air out of your mouth and there's nothing there. Okay, it's used to describe vanity. So if you read Ecclesiastes, vanity of vanities, it's Abel, Abelim. Okay, it's the same word. Okay, because Abel was just a passing breath. In the story, Abel doesn't even speak. He's born and he's slaughtered by his brother. Okay, so what have you done? Listen, your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground, okay, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. Okay, now this is the thing, the idea of spilled blood defiling the ground. We're going to come back to this, but this is actually a major theme that continues throughout the specifically the first 5 books of the Old Testament. This idea of guilty of blood. See, and of course, I need to say nothing of its use in the Gospels when they say, to Christ, to Pilate, his blood be upon us and our children. That means they're accepting the punishment for the shedding of the innocent blood. Now, this time the ground is once again being despoiled because it has to receive the innocent blood. So Cain, like his father, falls severely. And now, he says to Cain, the tiller of the soil, you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you till the ground, okay, which is, it will no longer yield to you its strength. You will be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. In other words, the ground is no longer can sustain you, okay? You have to actually just be a nomad. Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Today you have driven me away from the soil, and I shall be hidden from your face, and I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. Yes, that's the punishment. And anyone who meets me may kill me. Then the Lord said to him, not so. Whoever kills Cain will suffer a sevenfold vengeance. In other words, only the Lord himself can take life. See, it's in his hands, okay? It's in his hands. And he's even going to say in a little bit longer, even the meaningless slaughter of the animals is as grave as murder as the killing of a human being, okay? In other words, there's just no wanton killing for, let's go get our gun and go to Africa and get a trophy, okay? Not allowed in the biblical text because of the oneness of everything, okay? Now, later on, they'll be allowed to kill for food only after they drain the blood, because the idea is that the life is in the blood. And we know that, you know, when your blood, if you bleed out, you're going to die. So anyway, so his punishment is not death, but it is to wander, 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 wander. So, and the Lord put a mark on Cain so that no one who came upon him would kill him. Then Cain went away from the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, which is mean the land of wandering, east of Eden. Okay, so story of Cain, the fratricide, and again, the human story, okay, the human story. Because later on, we'll discover in the story of Noah, when we get there, that Noah comes from the root of Cain, okay? So in a certain sense, we are the children of Cain through the ongoing life. So anyway, so Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch, and that's good news, okay? Again, the blessing of the continuance of life. And now something strange, which you wouldn't pay attention to unless I I don't think you would, or its meaning, unless I pointed out to you. And he built a city and named it Enoch after his son Enoch, okay? So Cain is not wandering, okay? Because as soon as you build a city, you root, okay? You root. And you need to know that cities in the Bible are problematic, okay? Are problematic. Because it's an extension of man's ingenuity, his arrogance. Think of imperial cities. For example, I passed through Washington, D.C. Last weekend with Lisa. We were at a wedding. And the grandson lives a couple blocks from the Supreme Court and the state capitol and whatnot. So I was in the imperial city, okay? There's nothing like Washington, D.C. because of all of the displays of governmental buildings and power and whatnot. And its intent is to intimidate, okay? Is to intimidate, okay? It's an extension of America's greatness, has nothing to do with God, okay? So Cain is the father of the cities. And ironically, he names it after, in other words, that's his legacy, okay? Washington, D.C., we named it after the great Civil War general and the first leader of the country, okay? So, it's a monument to him. And like all cities, it has nothing to do with God per se. But so anyway, and the irony is the name Enoch means dedicated, okay? And the idea that his son should have been dedicated to God, but no, he dedicates it and builds a city, and so he can have a legacy, a footprint, a memory, a monument, okay? Anyway, then we go through so and so and so and so, which isn't as important until we get to verse 23, okay? It says, Lamech said to his wives, Ada and Zillah, hear my voice, you wives of Lamech, listen to what I say. I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for striking me. If Cain is avenged sevenfold, in other words, God's words of punishment to anybody, I will be Lamech 70-fold, 77-fold, sorry. So bad news, okay? Bad news. Lamech has a name, means something that is humiliated, brought low. So Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son and named him Seth. For she said, God has appointed for me another child instead of Abel, because Cain killed him. To Seth was also born a son, and his name was Enosh. Enosh is a funny name because it means actually a weak human being. Why would you name? It's like having your last name Lowe. It's like, why would you, something low and weak and whatnot. Anyway, at that time, people began to invoke the name of the Lord. So the story of Cain and Abel, it's set. Okay, Cain, like his father Adam, has fallen, and it leads to the building of a city, and again of breaking the commandments of God. So, verse 5, this is a list of the descendants of Adam. Now, this word descendant is also the word that was used earlier about the generations, and it's going to be repeated again. Okay, it marks the beginning of another story. Okay, so chapters 1 through 4, we've had the story of creation, and then the whole story of the exile, of the punishment, the fratricide, the Cain building a city. That ends a section, and chapter 5 just begins a story. This is the list of the descendants of Adam. So when God created humankind, he made them in the likeness of God, male and female. He created them. He blessed them and named them humankind, and they were created. When Adam lived 130 years, he became the father of a son in his likeness, according to his image. He named him Seth, which means appointed one. Then the days of Adam, blah, blah, blah. Then the days of Seth, blah, blah, blah. Where, this is just going to be repeated because I really am going to get to the end of chapter 11. Okay, when Enosh had lived 90 years, he became the father, blah, blah, blah. When Canaan, verse 12, lived 70 years, he became the father, blah, blah, blah. 15, when Mahalal, same thing. 18, so on and so forth. Verse 21, here's where I want to get. When Enoch, the dedicated one, had lived 65 years, he became the father of Methuselah. Enoch walked with God after the birth of Methuselah 300 years and had other sons and daughters. Thus all the days of Enoch were 365 years. Enoch walked with God, then he was no more because God took him. Okay, so out of everything we've said, this so far is the only small ray of hope that someplace, somewhere, and now of all of these naming of names and the children, in other words, procreation, the world is being fruitful. This is the first mention of anybody walking with God. Okay, so there's a ray of hope, not through all these other people, but through this one person. And of course, he disappears, and God took him. There's no, don't try to, well, where did he go? Is he in heaven? The text doesn't say. It just wants to give you a little bit of hope, and what so far is a depressing, and trust me, I find the Bible mostly depressing, but with glimmers of hope, okay? Glimmers of hope, okay? So then it goes on and on, it goes on and on, and let's go to verse 30. Lamech lived after the birth of Noah 500 years and had other sons and daughters. Now, the word Noah is also a sign of hope because it means rest, okay? It's a rest. Tired after work, David? You want to rest. Hopefully, that woman God gave you, bone of your bones, might even cook for you. Might even bring it into your couch, if you're still too, it means rest, okay? It means rest. So Noah's a sign of hope. So anyway, these are all the days who were 700, and verse 32 at the end of chapter 5. After Noah was 500 years old, Noah became the father of 3 sons, Shem, Ham, Japheth. Okay, so chapter 6. So we've had, again, the story bump forward to the next major section or person, which happens to be Noah. Okay, so again, you will find this a lot. You will bounce from a major player, a lot of minor players, hit another major player. The story will continue. And again, as I said, everything is written for instruction. Okay, for instruction. So Let us not pretend that it can function any other way. It's for our instruction. So we will hear and do what God wants. So we have the story of Cain and Abel as a warning. Okay? Abel comes and goes, and yet we are as responsible for him as we are for ourselves. And not to succumb to anger, jealousy, greed, lust, wanting to create a legacy of our own. Okay? Everything belongs to God, and God is supposed to supply all of our needs. So, chapter 6. When people began to multiply on the face of the ground and daughters were born to them, the sons of God, now this is a strange statement, saw that they were fair, the daughters, and they took wives for themselves of all that they chose. Okay. This is actually, if you read it in terms of kingship, sons of God as the royalty, okay, taking wives at their leisure, more than one. Then the Lord said, my spirit, okay. Now this word spirit is the same one of the wind earlier, the beginning of Genesis, and the same thing as breath, and the same word, it's translated here, spirit, shall not abide in mortals forever, for they are flesh. Their days shall be 120 years. Yeah. So the fullness of life, that's a number that will be used, and Abraham will be 120. Anyway. Then the Nephilim, the giants, were on the earth those days, and afterwards, when the sons of God went into the daughters of humans who bore children to them, these are the heroes and the warriors, blah, blah, blah. Verse 5, the Lord saw, see, it's not just that the humans procreated, but also the wickedness procreated, in a manner of speaking. The wickedness of humankind was great in the earth, and that every inclination of thoughts of their hearts was only evil continually. Okay. So, bad news. And the Lord was sorry that he had made humankind on the earth. It grieved him to his heart. Notice we're sort of talking almost in human terms about God and feelings and the heart and whatnot. Okay. We know from the Genesis earlier that the world has been tainted, okay, starting with Adam and Eve, and now with Cain, and now in general, okay, it's proliferating. Okay? So the Lord has a solution. I will blot out from the earth the human beings I have created. In other words, he's giving up. His experiment is whatever it is, okay, just hear it, because it's really harsh. I will blot out from the earth the human beings I've created, the responsible party, together with animals and creeping things, birds of the air, for I am sorry that I have made them all. In other words, we've spoiled creation for all of God's creatures, except, of course, those that live in the sea, because they'll be unaffected. But Noah found favor in the sight of the Lord. Okay, so here's our next ray of hope. That's why I talked about Enoch, okay? He found favor. These are the descendants of Noah. Noah was a righteous man. Blameless in his generation, Noah walked with God, okay? That's the exact words that it said in Enoch in chapter and verse 24, and Enoch walked with God, okay? So, just one. So there is one hope, okay? So, yes. It's like, okay, I'm looking at the participants in today. So if just one of you shows up, it's worth my trouble. Our egos would like more, but if just one shows up, we will continue and move forward, okay? So Noah, righteous, and righteous is technical. I've shared this notion. It's a legal term, okay? That means you have kept the commandments, okay? It's not just, oh, well, he's a righteous, no. It means you see this person has been faithful to God's commandments. So Noah doesn't deserve the corporate punishment that everybody else is getting. So we know the story. He has the 3 sons. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight, was filled with violence. God saw that the earth was corrupt. See? All flesh had corrupted its ways upon the earth. God said to Noah, I have determined to make an end of all flesh. For the earth is filled with violence because of them. For now I'm going to destroy them along with the earth. Okay? The dry land. To the dry land. We read Genesis 1 again in the first 3 days. All that he did to separate the waters and so on and so forth and bring forth dry land. Okay? It's going to go. Okay? So I'm now going to show, okay, make yourself an ark of cypress. Okay. And I mentioned in my introduction this word taba, which is the word for ark, is also would be used again for about Noah and his basket in the Nile, because that will be another beginning. Okay, if you notice in the Bible, there's lots of starting overs, So make your rooms, blah, blah, blah. And you know that, make a roof for the ark, finish it to a cubit, blah, blah, blah. For my part, I'm going to bring a flood of waters on the earth to destroy from all under heaven all the flesh in which is the breath of life. Everything that is on the earth, the dry land, shall die. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall come into the ark, you, your sons, Shem, Ham, Japheth, your wife, your sons' wives with you. Every living thing of all flesh, you shall bring two of every kind in the ark to keep them alive with you. You shall bring male and female of the birds of the air according to their kinds, the animals according to their kinds, of every creeping thing, blah, blah, blah. Also take with you every kind of food that is eaten and stored up, and it shall be food for you and for them. Noah did this, he did all that God had commanded him. Okay, so the setting is set for the destruction. Let's read, and then we'll talk again about how functionally the world is returning to the chaos of the beginning. You see, when it was void, and there was the abyss, and there was the darkness, and there was the waters and whatnot, to where it is no longer could sustain life. So the ark is the image of the dry land for all that is kept. Why? Because he's going to start again. Okay, God literally is starting all over with Noah, the one righteous. That's, you have to keep that in mind. Then the Lord said to Noah, go into your ark, you and your household, for I have seen that you alone are righteous before me in this generation. Take with you the 7 pairs of all the clean, blah, blah, blah. And then he says in verse 4, for in 7 days I will send rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and every living thing that I have made I will blot out from the face of the ground. And Noah did all that the Lord had commanded him. Okay, so Noah was 600 years. Now, what I didn't mention, but I wanted to mention, and it was back in chapter 6, verse 9, where it says, these are the descendants of Noah. Okay, these are the generations. This is the Noah story. Okay, so even though we're reading about the flood, the story is about Noah. The flood is just the means for punishment, for judgment. Okay, for judgment. Right? Use the waters, unleash them. Okay, unleash them. We'll see how he talks to us here. So Noah was 600 years old when the flood of waters came on the earth. Noah, his sons, his wife's sons went to escape the waters of the flood, clean animals, blah, 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 as Noah commanded, and so on. So, verse 11, in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, on the 17th day of the month, on that day, all the fountains of the great deep, this is the image I wanted to leave with you because it goes back to the first chapter, burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were open. In other words, the firmament that was protecting, and keeping the waters at bay so that they wouldn't destroy, are now being opened. The rain fell on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. Okay, so the judgment. And then of course it just goes on and says, verse 15, they went to the ark with Noah, 2 and 2 of all flesh, blah, 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 as the Lord had commanded him. 17, the flood continued 40 days on the earth, the waters increased, broke the ark, it rose high on the earth, it swelled, increased, blah, blah, blah. And all the flesh, this is verse 21, died that moved on the earth, birds, domestic animals, wild animals, all our pets, sorry, those of us with Australian shepherds, didn't make it on the boat, everything on dry land in whose nostril was the breath of life. Okay, again, God has given life through his breath. Okay, he blotted out everything, and only Noah was left, and those that were with him in the ark, and the water swelled on the earth for 150 days. So do not, please, do not ask me, because it'll mention Mount Ararat. Is there an ark? Should we go do an archaeological dig to find Noah's ark? How is it that he, because they're going to be in the ark for a year. How is it that that's irrelevant to the story. The story is about God, because of one righteous man heeding his voice, decides to try again. Okay, he was fed up earlier, as we just read, and he's going to try again. Okay. Hopefully he won't regret it this time. I like the beginning of chapter 8. because it sounds funny to my ears. And believe it or not, you're going to hear it again in Exodus. Exodus, about God remembering his people in Egypt after 400 years. Okay, it's like he was on a vacation or in Cancun or wherever God takes a break and doesn't want to deal and be bothered. Okay, God remembered Noah, all the wild animals, all the domestic animals that were with him in the ark. Okay, so after this long period of judgment, God made a wind blow over the earth. Now it's wind. Before it was spirit. Now it's wind again. The same word in Hebrew. I just point that out just to show you how translations vary. Made a wind blow over the earth. We've had this. The water subsided. The fountains of the deep and the windows of the heavens were closed. Okay, the faucet has been turned off. The rain from the heavens were restrained. The waters gradually receded from the earth. At the end of 150 days, the waters had abated. Okay, flood's over. 7th month and the 17th day, blah, 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 the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. The waters continued to abate until the 10th month. The 10th month, on the first day of the month, the tops of the mountains appeared. At the end of 40 days, Noah opened the ark that he had made and sent out the raven and went to and fro until the waters were dried up from the earth. Then he sent out the dove with him to see if the waters had subsided from the face of the ground, but the dove found no place to set its foot, and it returned to the ark. Okay. He put out his hand, blah, blah, blah. He waited another 7 days, did it again. The dove came back, this time with a beak, with olive leaf in his beak, okay? Sign that life is returning, okay? Life is returning. He waited another 7 days, sent out the dove, and it did not return anymore. It had a place to land, okay? So now judgment is over. So afterwards, verse 13, Noah removed the covering of the ark, looked and saw that the face of the ground was drying. Okay, in the 2nd month, blah, blah, blah. God said, go out of the ark, you and your wife, your sons' wives, bring out with you every living thing, blah, 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 so that they may abound on the earth and be fruitful and multiply. So you see, we're back starting all over, because again, the blessing and at the end of chapter 1 is be fruitful and multiply. Okay, so life continues and goes on generation after generation. So everybody comes out, they're given the blessing again. So Noah went out with his sons and his wife and his sons' wives, and every animal, every creeping thing. Okay, it goes on. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord, thanksgiving, took every clean animal of every clean bird, offered burnt offerings on the altar. When the Lord smelled the pleasing odor, the Lord said in his heart, this is your ray of hope. Okay, you had it with Enoch, you had it with Noah. This is your next ray. I will never again curse the ground because of humankind. Okay, he may do it for other reasons, but for the inclination of the human heart is evil from youth, nor will I ever again destroy every living creature as I have done. Okay, so and sooner or later God will make a deal. So okay, so it's not just the blessing, but this is not going to happen again. Okay, regardless. It's like, okay, I know the human being is mostly a hopeless cause. Okay, and that's why I said the Bible in many ways is mostly depressing, because it reveals the fundamental flaw and hopelessness of the human being. And again, it repeats himself. It's not unique to any time period. Okay, our period is just as lousy and sometimes seems worse, my life than it was 40 years ago, but it's cyclical. It's just the human being. This is, for better for worse, one of the premises of the biblical writers. Okay, behold, sin is at the door, crouching, looking for someone to devour. So that was back to Cain. So as long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. Okay, the cycles will continue to go regardless, no longer to be sort of affected by the human failure. So God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth. So we're starting all over, got rid of all those generations, whatever. The fear and dread of you shall rest on every animal of the earth and on every bird of the air, or on everything that creeps on the ground, on all the fish of the sea. Into your hands they are delivered. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. Okay, so they're no longer vegetarians. Sorry, monks. And just as I gave you green plants, I give you everything. Only you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is its blood. That's the whole sort of halal or the Jewish kosher laws, okay? The blood has to be drained out, and this is where it comes from, okay? And you only kill what you plan to eat, okay? That's the rule, biblical rule here. 4, your own lifeblood I will surely require, reckoning of every animal I require from human beings. For each one, for the blood of the other, I will require a reckoning of the human life. Okay, so this is the warning: no more murder, okay, of animal or human or whatever. Whoever sheds the blood of a human, by a human shall that person's blood be shed. In his own image, God made him. And you be fruitful and multiply. This is like constantly the theme is repeated. Abound on the earth and multiply in it. And God said to Noah and his sons, as for me, I'm establishing my, here we go. This is the other good news, which was intimated a little bit earlier. I'm establishing my covenant with you and your descendants after you, and with every living creature. Okay, so covenant, you know, sometimes we're just so focused on the human being the alpha and the omega, and therefore everything. No, he's bargaining and making a deal with all of his creatures. Okay, all of his creatures. Okay. Every living creature that is with you, the birds, the domestic animals, animals on the earth, as many as came out of the ark, I will establish my covenant with you that never again, repeating, shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. So the deal is he's not going to open the taps again, okay? There will be a judgment later on, but that's the end of the story, okay? Matthew 25. So now, this is the sign of the covenant that I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for all future generations. See, there's hope. I have set my bow in the clouds. It shall be a sign of my covenant between you and me. When I bring the clouds over the earth and the bow is seen in the clouds, I will remember. See, catch the language. I, God, remember my covenant. Because, you know, sometimes he forgets. I know we don't like this image of God. You know, he's no. It's a way of phrasing it to sort of press a point on us, okay? That God, don't theologize about him, because he's making a deal unilaterally for himself that he will not do this. In other words, okay, he's committing to his creation once and for all until the bitter end, okay? And so the rainbow, the image of, oh, I will remember my covenant that is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh, and the waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. When the bow is in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth. So God said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant that I have established between me and all the flesh. See, all the flesh that is on the earth. So that's the good news. God will punish not for destruction. Okay, think of this, those of us that are parents, grandparents, if we still have to punish grandchildren. It's not to destruction. It's punish to instruction. Okay, so when we have to discipline whoever, anything, work life, whatever, okay, it is meant to be instructive, not destructive. Because it is only in this destruction and the instruction that there is hope, that they will turn and they will listen. Okay, so the sons of Noah who went with him were Shem, Ham, blah, blah, blah. Okay, and from these the whole earth was peopled. Now, what is extraordinary with Noah is he had 3 sons, and through them all of creation starts again. Now, Noah, verse 20. Notice how these 6, 7, and 8 9 have been about Noah. And like everyone, almost everyone, I can think of maybe 2 people. There's a flaw. And this is meant to be instructional. You would think Noah would be on top of his game after all of this. Noah, a man of the soil, was the first to plant a vineyard. All of you Albanians. He drank some of the wine and became drunk. I mean, this is sort of comical. And he lay uncovered in his tent, okay? Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. Shem and Japheth took the garment, laid it on both of their shoulders, walked backward, and covered the nakedness of their father. Their faces turned away, and they did not see their father's nakedness. This is like literally, if you look at this as a strange story, okay? It's about, the story ultimately is about respect of the elder, your father, okay? And the nakedness is about shame. So when Noah awoke from the wine and knew that his youngest son had done to him, okay, he said, we have this word again, cursed, okay? Cursed. We've had this word a lot in the first 8-9 chapters. Cursed be Canaan. Lowest of slaves shall he be to his brothers. He also said, blessed be the God of Shem. Let Canaan be his slave. May God make space for Japheth and let him live in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his slave. After the flood, Noah lived 350 years. All the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. Now this, these stories also are ideological. In other words, they tell the origins. Canaan will become significant because in the time of Moses and the coming into the land, the Canaanites are there, and they will be removed, okay? They will be judged, okay? But anyway, so Noah's flaw, one of the sons is cursed and will be slaves to his brothers. And notice here the prominence of Shem, okay? Shem. Okay, Shem, is the bait root of the word Semite. Okay, Semite. So anyway, these are the descendants of Noah's sons. Okay, then it goes on and on and on. We can ignore most of this, other than it just like it's the story is moving forward, and I am going to jump all the way. I mean, you can read it. It just talks about, again, the procreation and the continuance of life and development and on until we get to the end. These are the families of Noah's sons, according to their genealogies and their nation, from these nations spread abroad on the earth after the flood. Okay. End of next section. Now chapter 11. Chapter 11. Now the whole earth had one language and the same words. And as they migrated from the east, they came upon a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And they said to one another, okay, so we're coming to the next problem. Come, let us make bricks, burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar, and they said, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top to the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, otherwise we shall be scattered abroad upon the face of the earth. Okay? So, think of the human. Think of what we said earlier about the issue of the cities, starting with Cain and whatnot. So here now, okay? They want their imperial city. They want their monuments. They want their towers, okay? They want to ascend to the heavens, and the heavens in the biblical world is the unreachable domain of God. Okay, of God. Human beings, forget about Tesla and everybody else going up into outer space and whatnot. No. It's not. No, it's the separation, the two. So this is dangerous. The Lord came down to see the city and the tower which mortals had built. Okay, see. Expression of their greatness, ingenuity, their engineering power. Think of the pyramids if you've had a chance to visit Cairo. The Lord said, look, they are one people. They have all one language, and this is only the beginning of what they will do. Think of, this is at least 500 BC, okay? But catch the language. There is nothing. Think where we're at. Think where we were at 30 years ago. Think when each of us bought our simple old computer with MS-DOS and whatnot. You see, barely functional and still cost more than computers cost today without inflation. This is only the beginning of what they will do. Nothing they propose to do will now be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language there, so that they will not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from over the face of all the earth, and they left off building the city. Okay? Again, I cannot stress that one of the constant themes, we see it in the beginning, the story of Cain when he built the first city, and so on. The biblical God is not a fan of cities, okay? He's a fan of the desert, of the dry places and whatnot, okay? Why? Because cities are linked to other gods. They're linked to the sort of the whole polytheistic sort of extension of kingship that is absolutely anathema in the biblical text. And you're going to see that all the way through the prophets. And that's why I had you read the end of 2 Kings last time, because again, it's all anathema, okay? Because it's about the arrogance and the power and the enslaving of the king to other people. So he scattered them over the face of the earth, and they left off building the city. Therefore, it was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth, and from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of all the earth. So my point is in a matter of chapter 4, 6 through 8, the destruction of the thing, and we're already, again, human beings are going back to where they were, okay? To where they were. So these are the descendants of Shem. He's the one that will be the most blessed. 100 years old, became the father of so-and-so, and Shem lived to the birth of so-and-so, and blah, 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 and more blah, 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 just the genealogies. And why? Because the genealogies simply function to move the story forward. We want to go to the next significant person. And that is starting in verse 22. When Sarah had lived 30 years, he became the father of Nahor. Sarah lived after the birth of Nahor 200 years and had other sons and daughters. When Nahor had lived 29 years, he became the father of Terah. And Nahor lived after the birth of Terah 119 years and had other sons and daughters. When Terah had lived 70 years, he became the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran. So, get to the next storyline. And the next storyline with Abram is going to go from chapter 12 through 25, I believe. I forget, 26, 27. It's going to be a long story. We're going to spend a lot of time on the person of Abraham. Then we go to the story of Jacob. That's a lot of time to the end of Genesis. So in between, those are the two main figures that we need to be instructed by. Now, these are the descendants of Terah. Now, this is odd because technically, when it says these are the descendants of someone, this is the story. This is Terah's story. Terah was the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran was the father of Lot. Haran died before his father, Terah, in the land of his birth, in Ur of the Chaldeans. Abraham and Nahor took wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai. The name of Nahor's wife was Milcah. She was the daughter of blah, blah, blah. Now, Sarai was barren. She had no child. Now, for all the time we've heard about be fruitful, multiply, be fruitful, the thought of childlessness is bad news, okay? Is bad news without explanation. But the fact that he mentions it here needs to get our attention because this is going to be the theme of several chapters coming, okay? Now, you need to know the meaning of Abram. He's not Abraham yet. He gets that name later. It means father. It means exalted father. Okay, that's what it means. Av is the word father. Ram is something that's lifted up, exalted. So his name is important. Here he is exalted father. Sarai means, not Sarah. She'll get the name Sarah later, and then we'll explain the meaning of those names when that happens in the text. Sarai means my princes. Okay? The idea that the irony of the statement is she was barren, but her name means my princes. In other words, that she's had lots of sons. Okay? Exalted father, my princes, no children. Okay? This is going to be a major theme. You can see here in the text, it's just introducing themes that you wouldn't know will be important until we continue the storyline. So Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, south of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, his son Abram's wife, and they went out together from Ur of the Chaldeans, ancient Babylon, and to go into the land of Canaan. Okay, now what we know as modern Israel. Okay? They were going to go into But when they came to Haran, they settled there. And the days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. Okay? So these first 11 chapters now literally set the tone for the rest of the biblical story, for the rest of the Bible. And that's why I wanted to get to this point, albeit rapidly, so that now we can now go from the general sort of stories of humanity, and now we're going to focus just on the story of a single person and see where that story takes us. And that will be Abram. Okay? So that's all I have to say. I mean, you are free to ask any questions if you have them. Again, these stories as are designed to teach, to instruct, and then we have to follow where they're taking us. Because honestly, you can't read the Gospel of Matthew, for example, if you are not well versed in these stories, because they pick up on the story. And the reason I know that is it starts with, this is the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. If you don't know these stories, you don't know the powerful beginning of his, and it uses the word genealogy to talk about the story of Christ and what is going to transpire after that. So anyway, so that's all I have for tonight. I hope you're all well. I'm going to go back to where I can see everybody. I put you on a different view here. I'm going to stop the recording too. Let me do that.